With my colleague here. I'll let Patrick deal with proposals, the question about proposals not taken on board, and he'll talk a little bit more about the budget deficit, right? Then I'll talk a little bit first about the budget deficit, one of the key measures, which has already been announced. Maybe some of you have missed it, but then I'll focus more on Jeff's issue about effective implementation. And if, so now on the budget deficit, it's very important, the point you made, that we shouldn't just comment after the effect. You know, we should be involved in maintaining checks and balances. And I think that's one of the biggest missing parts in this country for a long time. You know, it seems governments think that once they have the budget, they can do whatever they like to do in terms of how they execute that budget. And then we end up with this fiscal deficit because we're spending what we do not have. So the minister himself has basically, I would say tied himself, but more appropriately, I think he has made himself accountable by stating himself that he wants to see fiscal discipline and that he's not going to spend what he does not have. So if he starts spending what he does not have, we have every right to put a check on him and be able to say, look, Minister, you said you are not going to spend what you do not have, but you've just spent this money. And then he announced a planning and budgeting bill. You know, we've been talking about planning and budgeting bill for, I don't know, maybe 15 years, 20 years, you know? So, as civil society, we have to ensure that this time, the planning and budget bill should be enacted. Not this nonsense of amending the constitution and bringing back deputy ministers. That should people must spend what they've been budgeted to spend and not beyond. We know that you will never eradicate corruption fully, but surely let's have systems and procedures in place to ensure that we manage our public finances properly. And so that brings me to the issue of effective implementation. As we've been talking at platform that is going to monitor the implementation of this budget, basically ensure that this government carries out what they've said and that economic governance issues and economic justice for the Zambian people is maintained. So we are going to move towards that to ensure that there's effective implementation. And as you heard, the minister is welcoming ideas on the how.
Thank you so much. In addition to what Trevor has indicated, I think the issue of budget integrity is very critical, because when you're talking about deficit, is basically what is arising as a difference between expenditure and revenue. And the minister has actually put in place accountability mechanisms to ensure that that is safeguarded. And two key policy and legal instruments front. The bill that Trevor indicated, which is basically meant for adherence. So one of the roles that we have to play as civil society is to ensure that the bill is tabled before Parliament in the next sitting after this debate. Secondly is the Public Finance Act review, which looks at issues to do with punitive measures. And this has been a huge gap for a very long time in our country. Auditor General's report every year brings out those issues. The committees sit, parliamentary committees sit, make recommendations, they don't go anywhere. This is because of this flaw that we have in the Public Finance Act. So once this is reviewed and those issues to do with punitive measures are strengthened, together with issues to do with adherence, we hope to see that some of these issues will be reduced as much as possible. But also the minister did indicate the issue of us spending within our limits, not spending outside. And we did see a rise in our debt, public debt stock standing around 56% of GDP, which also contributed to our deficit as a result of interest rates repayments, high interest rates repayments. So one of the things that have been put in the budget is the issue of coming up with a medium-term debt sustainability strategy. So it's also our role to ensure that that is fulfilled on the part of government, because it's something that they've announced, and it's something that we should make sure that it becomes an accountability measure on the part of government. So this is very critical. As regards to the question on proposals not taken up, and I think this is one of the few budgets that should, off the top, almost 80%
Yes.
of our submissions
Yes,
have been taken on board.
Yes.
And this is quite gratifying.
Yes.
And government should
And
be
we should
commended.
commend the government.
So those issues that have not been taken on board, I think it's an issue